till I came here.
Fatal Frame. Maiden of the Black Water. Maiden of Blackwater. It's a good game. It's better than... It's tough because when the only other game I can compare it to is Mask of the Lunar Eclipse. And between these two games alone, these are like the more modern, more accessible, more recent, whatever. We're not thinking like Fatal Frame 1, 2, whatever else. But this game has better gameplay than Mask of the Lunar Eclipse. But I definitely like the aesthetic and the atmosphere and the vibe of Lunar Eclipse more. So it's tough because like the gameplay in Lunar Eclipse was so rough and slow and, you know, janky, and I had a rough time just playing and progressing. But I love the differences here is, I know Lunar Eclipse is like a whole different game, but I feel like they kind of go hand in hand, because if you played one, most likely you've played the other. And it's weird because I ended up playing Lunar Eclipse before this one because I was more biased towards, you know, masks, and between when it got released in Japan and then in the West, technically Lunar Eclipse is newer. So I was like, hey, I don't really like this franchise. I never wanted to bother playing it before, and I was skeptical about it, and it's like, yes, there's Japanese hot waifus and ghosts, but the camera gameplay just threw me off. I didn't really want to bother. Whatever. Combat and all that, and just looked kind of funky to me. Which that opinion still really hasn't changed a whole lot, to be honest. But, you know, we're talking next-gen versions here. Really good graphics, really good presentation overall, and audio design and visuals and all these things between both games. But Lunar Eclipse was just, I was so much more immersed in it, and yes, it was my first game, so I'm a little more biased towards it in that way. But considering the fact that I didn't really enjoy the gameplay, I'm not like 100% biased towards it compared to Blackwater. So it's tough because, you know, did I end up playing Mask before Blackwater because I knew Blackwater was going to be better? Because I went into each of these games basically completely blind. I saw a little bit of gameplay of Blackwater, and that was about it. Or did I save Blackwater? I originally played Mask first because I figured I wouldn't like Blackwater as much. But then it surprised me when I actually played it, and I was like, wow, this plays so much better. It was such a relief. Like, wasn't really looking forward to it because I was like, dude, if this plays the exact same way as Mask of the Lunar Eclipse, I'm gonna be pissed. And I was actually really surprised and relieved to be like, oh, she runs quicker. Everything's just smoother, picking up items, the quality of life, menus. I wasn't crazy about the combat kind of being a lot more, I feel like, chaotic and all over the place. I think Mask kind of did that better. Like, you can focus a little bit more on just simply taking the pictures, doing whatever it is that you gotta do, but they didn't quite make it as like, you gotta do this and that, and But yeah, there's so many differences, but they're so similar. Like, the only things that carried over between each of them is, you know, the waifus are hot, can't go wrong. You're playing multiple characters. You know, you're wandering around some place, doing something. This game just really surprised me, because, like, I kind of assumed, like, all these were about the same, but just slightly different themes. But, you know, there's ghosts, it's all kind of the same thing. Another thing that surprised me with this game, it just felt smoother, and, like, overall, even just the settings, like, we were in, like, a much more modern kind of area, and I feel like in Mask they didn't really... I think Mask was just better because, like, it felt very old, it felt very feudal, it felt very... You were on an island and run old down buildings, and like, everywhere you went was kind of like there was a history there was like a culture, there was a story and a darkness and and secrets and mystery. And I feel like with this one it was so predictable, because it's like, okay, the grudge girl, the ring, we get it, water, black hair, scary. We've seen it all before. It didn't really surprise me, or it wasn't anything new. It was familiar, which is good, as in, like, I can relate to these things a little bit more because I was a little bit more familiar with the material. But Mask was so nice because it was just such a, like, it was very much its own thing, and I felt like that's kind of important for... I guess there's a whole Fatal franchise, but I think for something to kind of have its own thing is important, because that's what makes it stand out amongst the others, versus it kind of just being more or less the same thing. And you can argue Maiden's unique in its own way, sure, because I don't really know much about Fatal Frame 1 and 2. But I can imagine those are a lot more basic, a lot more simple, straight to the point, ghosts. At least here there is a theme, there is a, like, this whole water... That's what makes Maiden and Mask very, strong titles, because they really kind of... They really stick to whatever it is that they're trying to do, and make it kind of its own unique deal. Like, you can imagine, okay, it probably started off as just, like, cute girl taking pictures of ghosts. Probably not much more to it than that. At least here there's, like, a little bit more and a little extra. Yeah, it was just so different. Like, I actually really enjoyed... Whether I enjoyed the game 100% or not doesn't change the fact that between this and Mask, you had that really old traditional Edo feudal Japan feel. But then here, there was a lot of that, sure, obviously, but it was like more of like a half and half. Like, if half felt old and half felt modern, it was a lot more kind of like what Japan would be like today. And even in Mask, like, yeah, there was actual buildings and there was things around you that told you, like, hey, we're not going back like 1,000 years or something. Like, we're still in a very, you know, modern-ish kind of area. But since a lot of this game pertains to its surroundings and its environment, you know, I feel like that's kind of what you're enshrouded in and encased in, is it's not just about the ghosts and this and that, it's about kind of where you are and what you're doing. And yeah, the gameplay, the cutscenes are good.
Yuri? Huh? What we're looking for should be in here. This is an excellent chance for you to take the lead.
Yeah, another note is that I feel like each game you play is like what, 2 different girls and then 1 guy. I don't know why that's a thing, but it is. But yeah, pertaining to playing as the guy, I did like Mask more. He had the flashlight, and I kind of liked who he was a little bit more, and because what's cool is each of these characters have their own story, and but it's all kind of tied together. With this guy in this game, it's not that I didn't like him or hated him or anything, but what's cool is, especially with this whole water theme, is that the guy in this game really reminded me of the dude from the Japanese version of Ring. Whatever his name was. That one dude. And that was kind of cool because I really liked that kind of like, hey, he's kind of the side character, but he's very much a main character too, and a good supportive role, and that's what this dude in this game. It was just weird. It was like playing The Grudge or The Ring, either or the game. You know, and I guess if Fatal Frame was going to do anything Grudge/Ring related, this is exactly what it would have been, and that alone might be more than enough incentive to play this specifically versus Mask or whatever else. If anything, like, could be their entry point into the Fatal franchise. I don't know. Especially if someone is like biased towards Sadako, and DBD is another example. You know, I can see why they would kind of be more drawn towards this game specifically. Because just by the name and of the title and the cover art, you know, you know what you're getting into. You know what you're expecting. Yeah, this one was, it was just very surprising the whole way through. I was like, it was more enjoyable to play, it was easier. I felt like Mouse was really hard. It was just hard to like get around, and especially as a first entry, man, like I really broke myself in, because if I feel like I started with this one and then moved on to Mask, I might have been broken in a little bit easier, like. But it makes me wonder too, like, okay, if I played this first, I think I would have been more prepared for Mask, but it's because that I played Mask first, why it was more relieved to play this next is because it was just a lot more, it had such a better flow to it. No pun intended. Water. Yeah, it's just weird. Like, you're in, like, you could go to Japan today and probably walk into many buildings exactly like what you'd see in this game, and it just threw me off because, like, what, 90% of Lunar Eclipse just felt like you really were like going back in time. And it's cool because the story had a lot to do with going back in time. This very ancient kind of, it's almost like it was them in another life, or it wasn't even that long ago, but it felt like it. Like these kind of distant memories, and kind of trying to remember. I don't remember if they had memory loss or what the deal was really, but and then here it was just, I don't know, I feel like these games start pretty slow, but once you really get into it, like halfway through, towards the end especially, it really does kind of come together, and there's a, you know, it might be about family, it might be about love, it might be about these kind of really deep, intricate emotions and state of mind, and And that's what's cool too, is it's not just about the ghosts and this and that. It's about, you know, struggles and emotions and feelings, and it's a pretty deep spiritual concept, really, which just makes the game that much more interesting. You'd wonder why Fatal Frame got to where it is, because it's presented these kind of themes in this way, and it can really make an impact on you. It's pretty dark though. It's pretty pretty graphic, as in like you know, and I think Mask was just about as guilty of that, but this one more so, because it was very it's a nice reflection of kind of that type of thing, but it was very, I don't even know a good, great, like pure innocent way to say it. Had a lot, at least towards the beginning. I feel like it kind of veered off that a little bit later on, but it was very, you know, taking kind of the closest word I can think of without actually saying it is seppuku. Harakiri, you know, taking your own fate and your own life into your own hands. Which, yeah, I mean, it was kind of, I wouldn't say it really shocks me, but depending on who plays it, I mean, you know, it's gonna be pretty disturbing. But when you're playing a game like this, I mean, you gotta kind of like go into it expecting that and have a clear conscience and kind of be open to whatever it is that the game may throw at you, because yeah, I didn't really like overthink that too much, or it's just it's a good game. As much as I would like Fatal Frame, this is, it's tough because I can't really say I like it more or less than Mask. It's really pretty equal, because I think I think Maiden's strengths and weaknesses are very different than Mask. Everything Mask is good and bad at, that's kind of where Maiden can kind of make up for that. And it's cool because I'm pretty sure these came out back to back. Gameplay is good. Yeah. I mean, I realize this game is its own thing, and I shouldn't have to compare it to Mask too much, but it's tough because it's all I have to go off of either, and usually when there is a game or franchise or series that has multiple entries, other than comparing it to like completely other different games, at least just within its own kind of world, it's good to know where you're at with things, and like to know what you like and don't like and why you prefer this and the reasoning and the details and the context. And this yeah, I don't know. Like, if someone asked me today which one I prefer more, I honestly wouldn't know what to say. I'd have to probably say Mask, because I just kind of, that's just like my thing. But God, I can't express enough like I was like, dude, she moves around quicker. And granted, this game is a lot bigger, or is in like, it's definitely more open and kind of open world-ish, and but that's like, I felt like I was able to breathe more and kind of like I wasn't suffocating as much. I didn't feel smothered or overwhelmed. And you can argue that's actually a good thing that Mass did. Very narrow hallways, very narrow buildings, barely any room to move around at all. Everywhere that you went, and you were in buildings most of the time. You were hardly ever outside. You know, a majority of this game thankfully took place outside, which is nice too. You're more in nature and fresh air, and you feel like, because when I get into these games, like whether I'm sharing it with other people in real time in a public space or not, like I'm still very much like in it, and I feel like I'm really there. Like, what if this was real? What if I was actually in this world doing whatever it is that we're doing here? And yeah, if there were any more negative things, it probably would have been like, you know, I feel like some of the ghosts get some cheap shots. You know, they put you in really difficult positions, like moving around, not getting hit and touched and hurt and all that. And yeah, like this, oh man, it was easier to grab away from the ghost arms. It was, you didn't have to shine your flashlight on something so specifically just to find it. It really like held your hand more, and like helped you along the way, which is nice. It was a good relief. But what I was trying to say earlier too is that supposedly this came out, or I heard it came out on the Wii or something, like years ago. I don't know if it got re-released or remastered or It's confusing because between it being available in 2 different countries and then the versions of the game, it gets kind of mixed up. But I guess at first Mask came out and then Maiden, but then these versions now, at least on PlayStation, technically the release dates say it goes Maiden and then Mask. But that just tells me that no matter what the details were back then, it's not really as relevant, or doesn't matter, because as of right now, today, technically, Mask is newer. But it's weird because it felt older, because it is, but it's not. And like Maiden felt better. It felt like it's definitely the game that should have came after Mask, because it was just so much more helpful. But I looked at it like it was older, slightly older, because I just got all confused. Like a lot of these games, like these remasters, re-releases, remakes, it'll say like, hey, this is like at the bottom when you start up the game in the main menu or something, the starting screen. It'll be like, oh, you know, 2009, blah blah blah, and then it'll say like 2016, for example. So I mean, that's one way to kind of know where you're at timeline wise, but it is confusing though, because you know, I'm so confident and I'm so sure that, you know, hey, I see these release dates. I'm not crazy. I'm not stupid. Like, I'm not just making shit up, you know? But then all it takes is for someone else to come in and be like, oh, well, you know, Google, technically this game it's the exact opposite. I'm just like, dude, you don't need to correct me on that, man. Like, that's irrelevant. That was years ago on versions that don't even matter, and all these things. Like, I'm talking about what's actually happening like right now today. I wasn't playing Fatal Frame back then. I don't know. I didn't know that. And it you know, it's not like it really matters, but that is something I feel like will put somebody off. It's not just me or homeboy or whoever, right? Because they're telling you one thing and then, you know, you actually go on the internet and research it, which not everyone's going to be willing to do in the first place, and then, oh, it turns out it's like this whole other thing. Of course it is, right? Usually that's how kind of things turn out, is like, you know, because these are games, they were meant to last for years. Like, whether a game dies out or not, like, someone's always gonna randomly stumble upon it and play it, and we're all different ages and on different schedules, and you know, when someone gets to a game, that's when it happens, and you know, life gets in the way, and it's not always going to be this kind of like play things as soon as they come out, and oh, I was there back in the day and played all the original this and that, and it's not really fair, because like it wouldn't be hard to say like, hey, I'm pretty good at keeping up with games today, or at least the ones I want to play, versus like, well, maybe back then I just wasn't really, that's just not what was really happening or whatever. But yeah, it's just as good as Mask. Could be seen as better / worse. As someone who is willing to play Fatal Frame, it's definitely up there, and what it is you can play and would want to play and try out, and it's not perfect. It's a game to play. It's okay. It's not bad. It's aight. Yeah. Fatal Frame.